A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you to the Economic Times World Leaders Forum 2026. I'm Ritika Jhanji Jagtiani, your host for the next 2 days, and it's so wonderful to have all of you join us here.
And I'm Suresh Venkat, your co host through the forum. Judging by the conversations that I can already hear murmurs of around the room, I'm not entirely sure you're waiting for us to begin, though.
I think that's a great sign, Suresh, because really the program is on the stage, but forums like this really come alive when the conversations start traveling around the room, and we can already see a whole lot of that happening.
And Ritika, there's going to be plenty to talk about. A story can begin as geopolitics over breakfast, and preferably avoiding a fight over geopolitics, and then find its way to a board meeting by lunch. Now, AI has moved from something that companies were experimenting with to something that they're making real decisions around. Through all of it, leaders are expected to make a plan and stick to it.
But I think it's really hard being a leader these days because you need to know when to stick to the plan, and you also need to know when the world is giving you a reason not to stick to the plan.
You know, Ritika, there's an old saying that says a week is a long time in politics. Now, the new saying is a week is an eternity in the world of AI. Who knows what will
Absolutely.
happen?
A week is a long time in business, and that brings us to the very theme of this year's forum, ladies and gentlemen, which is shared futures, secure, intelligent, resilient.
Those three words speak to the same challenge. How do we keep systems around us working under pressure, use intelligence without surrendering human judgment, and build for a world that refuses to stay still?
And over the next 2 days, we'll be exploring these questions with people making consequential choices from some very different seats on the table.
We'll hear from Mr. Kumar Mangalam Birla on building Indian businesses for the world, from His Excellency Muhammad Ali Rashid Luta on the growing commercial relationship between India and Dubai.
And tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, the former Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, joins us as we look at the global balance of power that is changing shape once again.
That's not all. We'll also hear from United States Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, and from India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar.
And of course, what an honor. Later this evening, we will have the privilege of welcoming the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, to the Economic Times World Leaders Forum.
But before we begin, a quick word of thanks to partners and sponsors who've helped make this forum possible. Our presenting partner, Spec Finance, powered by Visa, co-powered by Suzlon and Casa Grande.
Our category partners, Google and RRP Defense Limited, our knowledge partner, PwC, our state partners, the Government of Madhya Pradesh, Government of Bihar, Government of Maharashtra, Government of Chhattisgarh, Government of Uttarakhand, and a tourism partner, Delhi Tourism.
And our associate partners, IOB, Chennai Port Authority, GMDC, Skoda, Anand's Technologies, Zasna Foundation, and Truecaller. Now, before we begin, a quick note for those who may need it today. Simultaneous Hindi to English translation will be available for select sessions throughout the day. Headsets can be collected from the counter at the back of the room. Please to remember, you need to return those headsets at the end of each session.
And I'm sure there's a lot that's going to resonate with each one of you over the next 2 days. So if something you hear on this stage makes you think, makes you debate, please make sure you share it generously on the social media. But while you do that, please make sure that you use our hashtag, which is ETWLF 2026. And don't forget to tag the Economic Times.
While the conversations around the room have already started, Ritika, it's probably time to start the ones on stage.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Economic Times World Leaders Forum 2026. To formally welcome all of you to this year's forum, please join us inviting onto the stage the Chief Executive Officer of the Times of India, Mr. Sivakumar Sundaram.
Siva, can we have you on stage?
Let me begin with a confession. A few weeks ago, I called Sutajit, SK, the editor of the largest circulating daily, business daily in the world. And I asked him genuinely, do you insist on this? Is opening welcome address still relevant today's day and age? And there was a pause. You know, editors are very famous for a pause. And because whenever we read the newspapers also, we pause in articles. So after a long pause, he said, yes, absolutely you must. So I said, fine, I shall do so. But what is that I need to talk? And that's where the trouble began. Let me be very honest. What can I tell the audience here in the room which you already do not know? Because I'm sure that every single morning, all of you read the Economic Times. So I told SK that I'm going to ask people to raise their hands who are reading ET. But I know that all of you are not only financially strong, but also physically strong, and you must all have done your morning exercises. So I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. So you already know what ought to be known. And without any exaggeration, you're the most informed audience in the room today. And I'm not only including you, but also the several thousands of you watching online and on screens today. So I called SK back. I said they know everything. Most of them know considerably more than what I do and what exactly is my job. Then he said, just welcome them. So before, the one thing I can try to do is that ET gives you every morning one story at a time. There's a GST story on Monday. There's an FTA story on Tuesday. There's a Tata story on Wednesday, a bankruptcy story on Thursday. But nobody has the time to lay it side by side, because when you put them side by side, something remarkable turns up. One, and I know most of you already know this, that India is the fourth largest economy in the world. We passed Japan, and we are now looking at Germany with an expression I can only describe as unseemly. Point number two, we are the fastest growing major economy on the earth. Now, not only this quarter, but most of this decade. The IMF, the OECD, and the World Bank all agree on this. And if you know these three institutions, you will know that this itself is a minor miracle. Point number three, in January, we concluded a free trade agreement with the European Union. This negotiation began way back in 2007, and most of the companies and people represented in the room did not even exist in 2007. And this one, UPI, is my most favorite. I believe UPI now clears about 23.5 billion transactions every month. Roughly half of all the real-time payments in the world. It's half. And we know the practical consequences of this world historical achievement, that the chaiwala sitting outside the room knows the power of UPI, and he will get irritated if you take more than 3 seconds to make his payment. The insolvency and the bankruptcy code, it turned 10 this year. Over 4 lakh crore rupees were recovered from creditors, but the real achievement is just not money. The real achievement is that the Indian promoter, for the first time in the recorded history, has a working relationship with the concept of deadline. GST, which took a country trading in 29 separate pieces of legislation to make it one. Yes, admittedly, it has not been without arguments, but then it's a family. Now, none of these are headlines. Individually, they're certainly boring. GST is boring. Insolvency law is boring. Payment rails are boring. But so are shock absorbers. Shock absorbers are boring until the road gets bumpy. And the road is getting bumpy because the world outside this hotel has stopped living by rules. I believe rules are now defined in a place called Hormuz, and it is straightening everyone. No wonder it's called the Hormuz Strait. The world is running on impulses now. and on reaction to impulses, and increasingly on reactions to reactions. And that's where the old curse comes from. It's always attributed to Chinese, as all quotations of unknown parentages are. So it's called, may you live in interesting times. And here's one thing about the curse, it is only a curse if you have nothing to build. For a country like India, which is in a hurry, every disruption is a springboard. What India needs is not shelter from the storm, it is insulation. And I want to be completely precise about it because the two often gets confused. Insulation is not isolation. Insulation means staying open to the world without catching away draft blowing through it. And this is what all these boring reforms actually are. They are not schemes, but they are insulations, they are shock absorbers. And now, how do we do all this? And how do I know all this? The same way all of you do. Because every morning I also read the Economic Times. For 65 years, founded in 1961, 19 cities, the most widely circulated English language business daily in the world. Every single reforms I have just listed and the numerous ones I have not was argued over on the front pages of the Economic Times before it became a law. It was explained on the front pages before, and on a few occasions, it was also quietly improved because what appeared on ET front pages. ET first told you that Google was building a $15 billion data center investment on Andhra Pradesh. ET first told you that Sun Pharma was acquiring Argonon in a $12.5 billion deal. ET first told you that Tata Sons chairman N. Chandrasekhan was thinking of stepping down, and the same morning he shot off his resignation. Just to clarify, guys, we didn't start the fire. So in India, business decision gets taken twice, once in ET and once in boardroom, and usually in that order. So, and I do not say this as the CEO of the company. I say this as somebody who, like all of you, check the Economic Times before breakfast. So, which brings me up to next 2 days, the lineup. On the stage, you will have the Prime Minister of India, the External Affairs Minister, and a whole host of dignitaries. I'm not going to repeat them because you heard them from the MC. And I'm sure you also saw the nice advertisement in ET today, which talks about the great lineup the team has put together. We have an inventor from Russia who has turned a pigeon into a live drone. If somebody somewhere is rewriting the operating system of the world, this Zoom and people on the stage over the next 2 days will be a fair representation sample of the people rewriting the code which defines the world. So finally, thank you. Each one of you have given us 2 days. 2 days of a time, which in this room is the most expensive commodity in the building. It is one currency none of us can print, and you have handed it to us. And we do not take it lightly. The Economic Times does not take it lightly. And I hope that somewhere across these 2 days, you hear at least one thing with which you are going to disagree violently. In my experience, that is always the one thing which turns out to be the most useful and will let you pause back and think. So SK told me that my job is to welcome you. So on behalf of the Economic Times and the Times of India Group, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to the third edition of the Economic Times World Leadership Forum. Let us go and find out what tomorrow looks like before it becomes a breaking news alert, and ideally before the market reacts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siva, for setting the context of what's coming up next over the next 2 days. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to make the most of these 2 days, we recommend you download the ET WLF networking app, which is a great way to connect to the speakers and the attendees at this event. So please look for it at the Apple App Store or at the Google Play Store.
And with that, we move to our first conversation of the day.
And this is about because the instinct in these uncertain times is often to reach for experience.
That's all fine and dandy, Ritika, but the harder question is to ask whether that experience still fits the world in front of us.
So, ladies and gentlemen, in the very first conversation of this forum, we're going to begin with the problem, which is familiar, I'm sure, to many leaders present in this room. A perfectly good strategy can age faster than the organization built to execute it.
Now, technology is obviously changing what companies can do. Geopolitics is changing the conditions in which they do it. And the assumptions underneath the strategy can shift long before the organization itself is ready to move.
Which brings us to our very first conversation titled The New Business Reality Ditch the Old Playbook.
Our guest has spent close to 3 decades at one of the world's foremost management consulting firms, advising companies through growth, M&A, and major transformations. As its global CEO, he has also led a significant expansion of BCG's AI and technology capabilities, including the launch of BCG-X.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready for this one in conversation with Associate Editor at the Economic Times, Arichi Berman. Please, with a round of applause, let's welcome onto the stage the Chief Executive Officer of Boston Consulting Group, Christoph Schweitzer.
Thank you, Suresh.
Over to you, Arjun.
Christoph, it's great to have you back. It's really a pleasure. Um, the new business reality and ditching the old playbook. That's the theme we've been given. So let me ask you a very, very serious strategy question to start with. You're a German. I know you're a Bayern Munich fan as well. How does one fix German football?
Oh, we start in very depressive territory here after the World Cup. Look, I do think, as in business, first of all, you need to have a clear strategy, who you want to be and how you get there. You need the talent to deliver that, and you need the leadership to make it happen. And look, having celebrated the World Cup win in 2014 and now having had 3 terrible outcomes at 3 subsequent World Cups, I think the German soccer world needs to work on all 3. We have a new coach coming in, Jürgen Klopp. I think he has a chance, but it's going to be a lot of work.
They need BCG for sure, probably, to reboot.
They are definitely more advisable institutions than national soccer teams. Let's put it this way. Yeah.
But, I wanted to understand, we're talking about this new playbook. What are still the misconceptions that CEOs have or nurse about the old era? Open borders, free trade, stable, serene, shock-proof world. Do they still carry this baggage?
So I believe that the generation of CEOs today have realized that things have changed. And I don't think that we are in a mindset of this too shall pass. In fact, CEOs realize there won't be a high degree of political and geopolitical stability. They realize that while trade continues to grow, it's going to be harder and more cumbersome to navigate. And of course, you have massive changes coming from AI and technology more broadly. I think CEOs have understood that. The implication is that the good old strategy philosophy, or you articulate for the next 5 to 10 years where you want to play and how you want to play and how you're going to win, that still exists. I think we are now down to a 2, 3, 4-year planning horizon, and you constantly revisit because many, many important parameters are always changing. And so I think it's a lot more dynamic, and CEOs have started to embrace that. I think no one believes that it's going to be an easy world to navigate.
So it's no longer what should we do, but it's more about how do we survive?
It's about how do we survive. And look, many companies do not have a lack of understanding what is happening, but they have a gap in getting stuff done. And so I think there's a lot more discussion about how do we actually navigate the day-to-day reality of how we work. How do we deliver our strategy across an organization of tens of thousands of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people? So I think the philosophy is a lot about, okay, we just need to be more nimble, more agile, faster, more effective in getting stuff done. And I think that's top of mind for many.
You know, geopolitics has become, has taken center stage, and it has far more sway in boardroom decisions these days. Do you think companies or corporations, especially in emerging markets, are paying enough attention to risk management?
Well, let's talk about the geopolitical angle to that risk management.
Right.
I just spent time with one of the world's leading automotive supplier companies 3 weeks ago. And we worked with them hand in hand to build up what we call geopolitical muscle. And what we really mean by that is an ability to anticipate and then simulate all sorts of major parameter changes. What they have built is a control tower that more or less simulates their entire global network of supply chain and also sales channels. And look, if any big parameter changes, that could be a tariff, that could be other trade limitations, that could be interest rates, that could be oil price, other raw material prices, they can now simulate within minutes how it will impact their P&L, how it will impact their balance sheet overall. And they are much faster at making decisions, okay, which of these parameter changes actually change our strategy and which don't. And it goes way beyond the question, who are your suppliers and where are your factories? It goes into where do you sell, through what channels, with what partners, how do you allocate capital, what optionality do you have around that? So absolutely, geopolitics has reached the C-suite, it has reached the boards. And I think there are great examples by now how companies can navigate that with much higher pace and intensity than they used to.
Because, as I said, risk is no longer just about geopolitics. It's about tech risks. It's about tariff. It's there's so many things which nobody could even anticipate. It's about war now. I mean, which is a reality.
Yeah.
So, the other.
In fact, I would argue that the element of trade and tariffs is probably overemphasized in the general narrative around that. What do I mean? Look, we all see that life is getting more cumbersome in terms of being a global company. But overall, global trade continues to grow.
Yeah.
Also last year, where a lot of disruption happened, global trade grew. It is also going to grow in 2026 in all likelihood. So there are other changes, exactly as you say, that go way beyond trade and tariffs that are parameter shocks, including very important price signals in raw materials and oil and the like. Interest rates, and I think that overall assessment of what could change and what risks are there, I think is hugely important.
One of those changes is all about technology, and in that, AI certainly takes the center stage. Now, if AI is making intelligence cheaper, it's making information flows more democratic, and everyone has access to this extraordinary analytical capabilities, does the competitive advantage move from knowing more to deciding better?
I would say yes, and it's not only deciding better, but it's also making it happen faster.
Right.
How you implement the decisions in your organization, the pace at which that happens, the pace at which you upskill your organization, you evolve your talent base, all those things have become a lot more relevant. I think you're totally right. Information is even more available than it used to be. Now it's about truly evaluating, understanding, and judging what that information means, making the right decisions, and then getting it done. I think that's kind of the new competitive ground, and that's where winners emerge and losers will emerge as well.
Right. In this, changing sweepstakes, I want to ask you a question which is now at the heart of the consulting business. BCG, for example, you've tied up with companies like OpenAI, with Anthropic, but many of them are also partnering or doing joint ventures with Blackstone and several other firms. Is that a competitive threat? Do you think what prevents a tech company like an Anthropic to get into consulting?
Well, you have to ask them what prevents them. But look, my observation is the following. You look at thousands of BCG clients who are all adopting AI one way or another. The real bottleneck, Arijit, is not whether they buy this model or that model and whether the algorithms work and the models are good or not. In fact, the real bottlenecks and constraints are how much is your IT environment ready to interact with those models? That's a question of data, that's a question of IT setup, etc. Yeah. And then most importantly, the biggest question is, how does your organization actually embrace the set of tools that's available? The processes, the org setup, the capabilities, the incentives, the culture, the leadership. That's what makes things happen and also what makes things fail. And we always use this simplistic formula, which we call 10-20-70, to get to 100% impact from an AI adoption in a certain function. 10% of the complexity is what model you use and that model works. 20% is the surrounding data and IT infrastructure, and 70% of the challenge is the human element of getting work done. And we, as BCG, bring together all three. And we do, of course, work with the LLM companies and the AI companies on the 10. We work with the tech companies more broadly on the 20. We have our own people who do things there, but we bring the 70. And the 70 are incredibly hard. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of emotional intelligence by leadership to get stuff done. I believe there's ample room for us to support that. I see it in our day-to-day business. Our impact or the impact on BCG from AI is hugely net positive. And it's been nothing but a big demand generation opportunity for us.
You raised this important point about the human quotient. For countries such as ours, the challenge, one may argue, is stagnation of entry-level jobs. Given that AI can do things smarter, faster, cheaper, where do we go from here?
Well, let me talk about my own microcosm. At BCG, we have 34,000 people. We recruit thousands of entry-level staff every year. And we do that with great excitement. That has not changed.
Okay.
Why? Well, the generation of the now 24, 25, 27-year-old graduates from college or grad school are formidable. They are incredibly talented. They are driven. And most importantly, they are so AI fluent. They come from university and they know how to use a broad set of tools in the day-to-day. You don't need to train them. If anything, they come to big institutions and train those institutions how to do that. Do I want fewer of those? Absolutely not. In fact, they are incredibly differentiating for BCG, fantastic talent. And so we have not reduced our junior level intake. We have actually continued to hire through the whole cycle of business and the world. And we are very happy about that. I do not anticipate that there will be huge obsolescence. Other institutions come to different conclusions there. So I'm excited about
You're an
that
outlier, let me tell you, because everywhere, at least we go, the overwhelming narrative seems to be that the India story that hinged a lot about, tech exports, jobs in the tech sector, that's stagnating, especially at an entry level. Yeah. And if you are wearing a consultant hat and advising the government, how would you tell them to deal with the short-term, mid-term, and long-term issues?
Look, if you look at the IT services world in India, which has been such a formidable force of growth and also, the talent development over decades now, Arijit, are there going to be parts of the value added in that world that will be automated away with AI? Absolutely. Just as there are important elements of what a banker does in New York or what a lawyer does in London or what a marketeer does in Tokyo, things are going to get automated in any industry, also in IT services. But then you need to look at the upside, at the net new opportunity, at the innovation that can come. I have huge confidence in the Indian universe of companies there, in their leadership, that they will come up with new offerings, new capabilities that are going to be in demand. Now, we talk about hundreds of thousands of people in certain companies. That's going to be a lot of work, and it's going to take time and persistence, but I'm not overly stressed about the downside. I think there is always upside, and then it's the CEO's job to make sure that materializes.
Right. Can there be this concept of, a country being an AI middle power, or we are moving towards a world which is more binary? Either you have sovereign AI or you don't.
Well, for sure, if you just look at the tech stacks at this point in time, things are polarizing a bit. Let's see where that all trends over the years. We as BCG believe that there is potential for AI middle powers, and certainly for India to be one of those. Other examples include Europe and the Middle East and Japan and Korea, etc. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But in the end, Arijit, I think we have reached the window where the real question on a macroeconomic level is a country ready to productively adopt AI and to make best use of that? Not every company is going to have, not every country is going to have an NVIDIA and an OpenAI and an Anthropic and a Google and a Microsoft, etc. But how do you use that technology, I think, is going to be either massively productivity enhancing or it can be a real downside. And I believe India is generally well positioned. I think there's openness to technology. There's also care in selecting where you use it. And so I believe there's opportunity, but that's going to be a race between many countries and many companies around the world.
So we are running out of time. So the last thing I wanted to ask you is, if you were to give a CEO one uncomfortable piece of advice, which is a reality check, what would that be?
Well, many CEOs ask me the question, well, Christoph, what does this mean for me? What should I do? And the immediate thing that occurs to people is, oh, I need to get more fluent on AI. I need to be more savvy myself. And there's all sorts of upskilling efforts also happening in the CEO community, right. I can tell you. So that's good. So one piece of advice is do that. You will not be credible. In fact, you will not be competent to make important investment decisions and strategic decisions and make strategic choices if, as a CEO, you don't understand where the technology is going. Yes. That being said, the human element does not go away. And I believe we are now entering a window where judgment, the ability to deal with very complex information and make the right decisions, as you said earlier, the empathy to bring along your organization, the motivational skills to turn all this uncertainty into a positive for your company. I think that human set of elements is also going to get more important. So in a way, the good news for CEOs is you can keep some of your good old playbook, but you need to learn new things. But what makes it hard is you need to bring it together. And I think it's a very interesting and very intense time for CEOs. Let's also keep in mind, Arijit, that the cost of capital, something we have not mentioned in this conversation, has exploded in many parts of the world. So there is a real cost to failure. There is a real push to prioritize truly investments, portfolio, all the things you do in your company. And so I think it's an intense time for CEOs, but you have to be good at technology as much as you have to be good in the human part of the equation. Bringing that together will make you win.
Christoph, you're an outlier, you're an optimist. It's great to start on that positive note. I guess my key takeaway is that the human factor is still very, very real. That's what makes corporate life exciting. I guess that's what makes the beautiful game of football exciting as well. So all the best to Germany and football, and thank you so much for taking time out and doing this.
Thank you so much, Arijit, and it's great to be here. Thank you.
All right. So the challenge is knowing when experience remains useful and when the playbook itself has become a constraint. Mr. Schweitzer, Orijit, thank you very much for that conversation. Another round of applause, please, for our speakers.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to move into something extremely interesting. From the challenge of leading businesses to change, we now turn to a very different kind of leadership and one of the most unusual journeys in Indian public life.
Now, long before she entered parliament, millions of Indians knew her as Tulsi, one of the defining characters of Indian television. Her work across television, films, and theatres spanned 4 languages and made her one of the most recognizable faces in the country.
Public life gave that recognition a very different direction. Over more than 2 decades in politics, she has served in both houses of parliament and spent 10 years in the union cabinet.
Her ministerial responsibilities have extended across human resource development, textiles, information and broadcasting, women and child development, and minority affairs, giving her an unusually broad view of policy, governance, and public communication.
And earlier this week, ladies and gentlemen, she returned to the political center stage as the newest National General Secretary of the Bharatiya Janata Party.
Which makes the title of our next conversation especially fitting: popularity, power, and politics. Picture abhi baki hai.
So let's get ready for this one in conversation with ET's Nidhi Sharma. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. Let's welcome Smriti Irani. Good morning, Mr. Irani. Over to you, Nidhi.
So we have with us Smriti Irani, former minister who doesn't need an introduction. So are you the comeback kid? Rocky Balboa is back?
Well, it's an comparison which gladdens my heart because if you compare me to a boxer in the political ring who could keep taking a lot of hits and keep coming back, that is not something I would shy away from, as long as I have the capacity to keep getting back up on my feet.
But did you go away?
I didn't, but I think that in a society where we cheer for the underdog, there were some who would want to cheer, saying that let's write her off. But there are some who are wise enough to know that you never know when she comes right back.
And here she is. So my question is, Smriti Irani, HRD minister and textiles minister, or Smriti Irani, general secretary? Which newly minted general secretary, which role is closest to your heart?
In a country of 1.4 billion people, as a citizen, if you have the opportunity to contribute politically or to the social conscience of your country, any role that you're given then is nothing but a privilege. There are very rare circumstances and instances when you get an opportunity to serve in the Indian Parliament. So, if you ask me what I hold as a blessing or as a privilege, the fact that as the first minister who could in 30 years make a new education policy, that for me was a great privilege. The fact that in a country of 1.4 billion, when we wanted to ascertain the quality of higher education institutions, I had the blessed opportunity to create the national ranking framework. The fact that the first MOOCs platform of the government called Swayam, I could lay the architecture of it. The fact that when we were fighting COVID, and global supply chains were constrained, and India did not have a PPE manufacturing facility in our country. As textiles minister, I could oversee that. If you ask me to turn the pages back in time, those have been opportunities of great privilege because it is indeed a great privilege as a citizen to serve fellow citizens in Parliament. But knowing the journey of my political organization, I am mindful of the same that before I came to Parliament, I had served a substantial amount of my political journey within my organization. And that journey gave me an exposure to the societal political needs of the country, which bore fruit when I became minister. So you cannot divorce the two.
So probably I'll reframe as a woman politician, what is more difficult? Is it more difficult to do policy and governance or politics?
If you're asking me as a woman, nothing is difficult.
Juggling roles.
No, I think that comes very genetically, naturally to any woman.
How
All
fair
the
is it?
women that you've seen here today have juggled a lot of things to get to that chair that they're sitting on. So I think juggling multiple responsibilities, multiple roles, multiple challenges comes just naturally to women, and particularly Indian women.
And challenges. What was the biggest challenge for Smriti Irani?
I never look at an individual or circumstance as a challenge. I always look at it as an opportunity. If you succeed, that means how you met that challenge, that particular landscape was, of course, a success. If you do not succeed, then that opportunity becomes a learning opportunity. If we keep looking at circumstances as challenges, they tend to psychologically overwhelm you. So I've never looked at any opportunity, circumstance, or situation as a challenge.
2 years, 2024 till now. We didn't see you in any active political role.
No, I
So,
think you did not miss me in West Bengal, did you?
no, we didn't. But from being a minister to now being back, what was Smriti Irani doing 2 years?
Well, when I left media, I was the highest paid professional in my arena. I went back after a hiatus of 18 years just to check whether I was competent and talented enough. It seems my contract says I was. So I went back to my job because for me, politics was never about a monetary gain, it was about contributing. It was a conscious choice that I made as a working professional to let go of my profession when I had an opportunity to serve in parliament. But I think that I was also mindful of a turn of events, which gave me an opportunity to decide, am I still competent as a professional in the field that I came from? And it seems I was, and I've held on to that job at least for a year now.
And how do you handle that? Everybody has been promised, Tulsi is back and Smriti Irani is back in an organizational role. So how do you juggle that now?
Well, I was juggling that role with my political responsibilities during my election campaigns as well. But mercifully, we had pronounced that the whole journey of Tulsi 2.0 will have a limitation. So we will live up to that contractual obligation and see where the limits and the lines are drawn.
I remember you told me, I mean, I was interviewing you once, and you told me that when you were being initiated into politics, you were a young mother and how you juggled those roles. Do you see that as a challenging time? Would you want to share that? Because it's always an inspiring, story for a lot of people that, how you would juggle those responsibilities, do your shoots in the afternoons and then fly and then campaign and then come back to your home and children.
I think the difference between me and the other working mothers in the country is that I have a microphone and they don't. I was initiated into electoral politics when I was 25 years old. I fought my first election when I was 27 years old. And the incident you're referring to, my child was 2 months old. So, yes, I would have a contractual obligation to go to my job. I had a very, I think, cordial association with my network where I could shoot the whole night. I would, with a 2 month baby, those who have brought up kids know that they tend to mercifully sleep through the night if you are lucky enough as a parent. So I would feed my child, put my child to sleep, then go to my workplace, work the whole night, come back when my child was awake, feed my baby, then catch a flight, go do campaign, come back. And I think I did that for a month straight. So I slept on flights and worried about the baby and then fulfilled my political and contractual obligations.
So you still don't see that as a challenging time.
Well, now the kids are grown up. So I do not have the added responsibility of looking at a young infant. But I think that with passage of time, working women tend to learn more on the job as to how to balance their professional and their personal commitments. So for me, I think, like I said before, the only difference between me and other working female professionals is I have a microphone and they don't. But this is an opportunity, a circumstance, a capacity that they address every single day.
Do you think we saw a recent exchange between Rahul Gandhi and Sandeep Dikshit? Do you think that politics is uh, unkind as far as or compared to other professions?
I think that that one incident is a great reminder to all women, especially women in politics, that it does not matter for some men how much of an achiever you are. It does not matter for some men how much you can contribute to your country or to situations across the globe. It does not matter how much you're societally valued. All it takes is for one brash man to bring you down, sexualize you so that you can be demeaned. That is a reminder, but it is not a standalone reminder. Competent women are normally brought down by such slurs.
I remember once you told me that the easiest way in politics for a man to bring down a woman is not to outpace or outrun her, but is to bring her down as far as her character is concerned. Have you been within the party, outside the party, been a target? Have you felt that women need a better platform in politics than they get?
I am not somebody who portrays myself to be a victim. I knew that when I'm attacked by people who are in opposition to my party, they will have sexual slur hurled at me. There were many who wanted to please the Gandhi family and thought that if their language got dirtier, they would be more endearing to the Gandhi family. But I also knew that that was an indication that they could not find me on the issues of competence. So if you're competent, and you're attacked only to bring down and assassinate your character, then know that they have no other better opportunity to somehow try and break you. So I am, in fact, mindful of the fact that this is the kind of attack that somebody in opposition will mount at me. But I am also experienced enough to know that that noise is only to distract from certain issues. So I would rather focus on the issue than the noise.
Body shaming, how we dress, women in politics. What's your opinion?
It is only done by those who have nothing productive to contribute to politics or to the country.
Doesn't affect you.
No,
How
on
do you?
my time, I can get as fat as I want, look as ugly as I want, as long as I'm a damn good politician and a policymaker.
You,
I don't seek personal validation from anybody.
as a minister, not many know you have chased a car, yes, full of drunk men, four boys you hauled up to a station. Are you still fighting a case? What
Yes.
was that? Will you tell us?
So, since it's a sub judice matter, I'll only say this that I was alone in a car and four drunk young men gesticulated in a fashion and then tried to kind of run down a car with a female alone. I did call up the PCR, did chase that car down, did haul the men to the Chanakyapuri police station, did file my FIR while I was a serving minister. And the drunk men said, हमें नहीं पता था स्मृति ईरानी है. सो आई सेड अगर आपको लगा कि नॉर्मल औरत है तो उसके लिए हरासमेंट ठीक था, स्मृति ईरानी है तो उसको हरास करने में आपको शर्मिंदगी महसूस हो रही है. सो आई फाइल्ड द केस, आई फाइल्ड एंड आई फॉट दैट केस एंड इट इज पेंडिंग जजमेंट राइट नाउ. I think I was gobsmacked when in the court when there was the lawyer from the other side who was cross questioning me. He looked at me dead in the eye and said, आप ये publicity के लिए कर रहे हो. So I think that I have gone through that whole journey in my life where I've written laws to protect women and children, but I've also stood in court seeking justice for myself.
So you're a young politician. We saw protests in Jantar Mantar. Where do you think is the disconnect? Because we saw the Prime Minister taking to Instagram. This was a party in 2014 which had holograms, which was on top of its game as far as social media was concerned. Now he's given directions to his ministers to be on social media. Is there a disconnect
I would
between?
not speak to the mind of the Prime Minister because I was not in cabinet and neither were you. I will only say if there was a disconnect, then you would not have the Prime Minister on Instagram, would you? And it is not that the Prime Minister is new to Instagram. It is just that you were a bit taken aback that the fact that he would put out a story or a video, maybe at 11 in the night or 12 in the night. That is a prime minister that has his hand on the pulse of the people. That is a prime minister that is responsive. But the whole ageist value that this particular discourse brings to us compels me to ask one question in the room. How many of you are below the age of 29? Could you please help and stand? All of you who are below the age of 29. Could you look at everybody else in the room and tell us, are we redundant as human beings because we are not 29? Are we not relevant because we are not 29? So relevance has no retirement age. If Tukaram Mumle was going to look at his age, at 54, he would not have tried to catch Ajmal Kasab. He would have said, let somebody from Gen Z come and catch the terrorist. That is not how institutions work. We are 64 crore Indians who go to vote. We all do not vote for the same party. We all do not vote for the same individual. We all do not conform to a particular ideology, a particular political thought, but we all believe in the institutions of India. We do not abuse our institutions. We do not claim it's a utopian state. We say it is a democracy at work. So if these 29 and below aged youngsters think we are not redundant as human beings, then nobody at Jantar Mantar shouting abuses at me can make me believe that as well. You cannot go to Kargil and shout down men in uniform in the Indian armed forces and say, I pay tax. Go and say that to Vikram Batra's mother, who will say, I will give you your money, give my son back.
But do you
You
need to?
cannot say to any ASI like Tukaram Ungle, I will beat you because you wear a uniform.
But
So a country needs the impatience of the youth for its future, but it also needs the experience of those who know what is the cost that we pay to be a democratic country where every citizen, irrespective of age, region, and religion, has a voice and has a right to be respected. So you need the impatience of the youth, but also you need the experience of those who have lived long enough to know what it takes to build this country.
But does the party, since there were protests across India, Pune, we saw Mumbai, now in Jharkhand, at Jantar Mantar, does the party need to reconnect? Where has the party or as a society, we need to recalibrate and bring the youth
Like
into
I
our.
said, everybody is deemed important irrespective of their age to be heard. And I demonstrated that in this very room, that everybody is relevant, everybody is to be respected. There are always questions thrust upon my political leadership, whether we are connected enough. And if the relevance of connected enough is to make sure that the Prime Minister speaks directly to the youth, the Prime Minister has projected that relevance and that respect. If the issue is that can we come together and better our systems, the Prime Minister has, through his own conduct, ensured that he's created a task force, which is also headed by people who fought elections against him, all so that they can contribute to building better systems. So the Prime Minister, his office has been responsive.
I'll bring this with the last question that we have to you. 2029, are you the primary challenger for Rahul Gandhi?
It seems my ghost does not haunt only the Gandhi family, but even people like you who would love to ask that question. But I can only say this, that in a country where you thought that a dynasty could not be challenged, here comes a woman from no political affiliations that you think is deemed fit enough to be a challenger. And that is the strength of the Indian democracy, that a woman out of nowhere can come and challenge the biggest political dynasty of the country and be the only female to ever defeat in the history of our country the sitting national president of the Indian National Congress. So I'm glad to have that privilege.
And what do you think? How do you think that you, as a woman leader, can promote women in
The
politics?
word leader is not entrusted to only a gender. So I do not know why you would want to address me only as a woman leader. We never have platforms like this where a male leader comes and we say, tell us what you can do for other men. So why is that compulsion thrust upon only female leaders?
Because there aren't many of us.
There are many of us. How many female leaders in the room? Can you please stand up?
We'll do a percentage
All
as
of
well.
you. Even the lady who thinks she's sitting, the fact that you're in the leadership forum, that means Economic Times recognizes you as a female leader. So please stand up. Those are the women. There are not very few of us. There are plenty. Depends on whether you're looking or not. I don't know why some won't stand up, but you are a leader. Stand up. If you won't, nobody will then recognize you.
So you do it. Do you see the
Yep.
hesitation?
There are many of us. If only you were looking. Where is Irina? Where's Irina Ghosh? So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the head of Anthropic, an Indian lady. So there are many women who lead, if only you were looking.
Are they enough? So are they enough?
Can they ever be enough? अभी 33% मांगने में इतनी दिक्कत हो रही है. सोचो 50% मांगेंगे तो क्या होगा?
पूरा आसमान हमारा होगा.
पूरा आसमान हमारा होगा. हमारे, I think no woman ever wants everything सारा का सारा. And that is the beauty of being a woman. We are intrinsically, genetically inclined to always share. The only problem is we have always had to ask for our share. जो हमने बांटा उसमें से भी हमें अपना मांगना पड़ता है. यही दिक्कत है.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
From television fame to the union cabinet and now a new chapter in party leadership. There's plenty more to this story. Ms. Irani, thank you very much. And thank you, Nidhi, for giving us that insight.
I think so far, two very different kinds of leadership have opened the day today, Suresh.
True that. Our next conversation stays with leadership, but turns to the technology now forcing organizations to reconsider how it is practiced.
And ladies and gentlemen, with this one, we return to the business world and to the force changing some of its most basic assumptions. A couple of years ago, the big question for most companies was, what can we do with AI? But today, the harder question is, what does AI do to the business itself?
Because once AI moves from experimentation to everyday work, it stops being just another technology decision. It begins to change how companies organize, how people work, where capital goes, and increasingly how leaders think about competitive advantage.
And this brings us to our next panel titled Leadership in the Age of AI Reinventing Businesses for the Next Decade. And joining us for this one, ladies and gentlemen, is a formidable lineup of speakers, starting with partner at McKinsey, Cheryl Lim, President Asia Pacific at SAP, Verena Seao, Managing Director of Anthropic India, Arina Kos, and Head of Private Equity at Spec Finance, Hans Christian Dahl Nygaard, and Suresh. For this one, you're moving from this side of the stage to that one.
All right, I'll try and do my best.
All the best for that. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, welcoming our panelists and a moderator for the session, Suresh Venkat.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We have a short amount of time and many questions to go through. So I'm going to try and go through the questions as soon as I can. Let me start with Cheryl. You've got a book called Shapers and Founders, right? What is it that some of Asia's founder-led companies are doing when it comes to talent? What is the difference in approach?
I think one of the things we see about Asia's founder CEOs, and just quick context, we interviewed 30 of Asia's founder CEOs. They come from companies that have created disproportionate value over the last 2 decades. And one of the things we noted that was distinct is that these founder owner CEOs take quite a different view on talent than most organizations. The first is there's a very clear sense of, look, we hire for mindset, for attitude, for the cultural fit, rather than necessarily the skills. There is a desire to say we can build and train people over time. they take a true cycle view. They are loyal to their employees. They recognize there'll be peaks and troughs. And so they say, look, we will journey with you and we're going to help you evolve over time. These are traits that I think are particularly relevant today in today's AI age because we don't necessarily know what skills we'll need in the future. So the sense of saying we hire for people with the right attitude, the desire to learn, and we invest in our people over time to help them.
Hans, many people have been commenting about the fact that India doesn't have a serious play in AI. You're an investor in India. What does the AI future for India look like?
Question to me, right? Well, if you look at the AI industry, I'll try to look first at the private equity groups and their statement about AI. And for example, EQT, the largest, one of the largest private equity houses in the world, say that they want to build the most AI literate investment organization, and I guess in the world. So that shows how important it is for AI. But India doesn't really have the infrastructure, the hardware production of chips, and they don't really have the big tech giants, right? And they don't have this frontier lab model labs that produce this. It's dominated. It's a hegemony of the US with China coming. So it will be extremely capital intensive to develop this, and I don't think it's a good road for India to take on that. I think India has a much better chance to use this because it's scalable, and India has talent. India has enormous talent. India has the infrastructure in place to use this, and they have complex problems. They have real world problems that they can use AI to fix it. So we as an investor would much more bet on investing into companies that are utilizing this technology than actually developing the infrastructure or the technology itself. So companies in India using AI, using it the correct way, implementing it, developing it, using it to generate turnover, excellence, and comparative advantage. These are the companies we're looking at.
But the lack of a foundational model doesn't bother you from an investment perspective?
Not really. No, I think this is AI will be it's like a commodity. You can access it anywhere, and of course there might be a geopolitical risk that it's owned and controlled by the US and maybe China to some extent, but these are companies. They want to earn money, so this will be a product, commodity available worldwide for sure.
Okay, I see Irina smiling at the last sentence. I'm just going to come to Irina in a little while, but before that, Irina, we keep hearing about this concept called the autonomous enterprise. Before this, it was the smart company, the cognitive enterprise. Now it's autonomous. We're talking about how leaders are going to cope with AI, and now you're saying you'll have a company without leaders. It'll just run itself, the autonomous enterprise, with SAP's help.
Well, I think that sounds like science fiction, but you never know. What is science fiction 10 years ago is reality today, right? And when we talk about autonomous enterprise, it's not that there are no more people left in the company, right? It's to ensure that in terms of activity, in terms of the tasks that have to be done, that should be done by technology, right? Because that's when people can focus on what is value added tasks. That's when people can focus on strategy, about thinking about how they drive business growth, and thinking about how they can also develop themselves better. So for SAP, when we talk about the autonomous enterprise vision, what we see is that leveraging on AI, on business AI, which is different from consumer AI, but really enterprise AI that is embedded within the processes that have got trusted business data and the governance in place, we can run autonomously so that our people can focus on strategy and are still very much on top of giving the direction and then talking about how they can bring more value to the company. Right? And based on a recent research that we have done with Oxford Economics on the value of AI, It's really good to see that India is leading the way in terms of leveraging on AI investments from a strategic view, because we can also talk separately about how it's still very piecemeal today when we talk about moving from experimentation to execution. But India is number 2 in terms of leveraging on AI as a strategic investment.
Okay, that's good to hear. Irina, last but not the least, for those in the audience who don't know what the Gartner hype cycle is, it's a simple graph that looks like this. It first says peak of inflated expectations, trough of disillusionment, and plateau of productivity. Right? I think it happened with the dot-com, it happened with internet, it happened with innovations in housing finance. And now we are at the point are we at the point of inflated expectations where we think AI can do everything? And therefore, is the trough of disillusionment coming very soon?
Let me frame the answer a little differently. And first of all, thank you so much for having us in the panel, and very honored to be along with all of you guests. I think the way we see it is the momentum has certainly not cooled, and the conviction that we are seeing from the ecosystem is much stronger and louder than any hype cycle. Why do I say this? A few things. First of all, where do I put the pin also? In this entire curve, there are a few parts. For example, when we started, there were chatbots, there were AI assistants. They are table stakes for everybody quite some time back. It comes in the age of what you're building with agents. We've got started and it's up in the rising. And thirdly, towards autonomous discovery, we are just in the initial stages. So everything in various stages. That's the first part. But more importantly, the conversations that we are having with customers, fellow travelers in the entire journey, about 18 months back, it used to be, what can I do with AI? Have I really started my journey on AI? Now, it is to do with have I built across on production scale, what can be put across through brittle testing, what can have audit trails, which means people have gone past any demos and wanting to use it and be convinced about it. And thirdly, the capability of the models itself. It's gone across on doing very long horizon tasks, and that capability is doubling. That's been happening for the last 2 years. So just to answer your question, I would just summarize by saying we are not at the peak, we are possibly at the beginning of an exponential acceleration.
The investor, I think it was John Templeton, who said the four most dangerous words in business are, this time it's different. So, Irina, is it different this time, or is AI another technology that we're going to get used to and just incorporate into our lives?
Absolutely very different. And the way we are seeing it from Anthropic in India, India remains the second largest user of Cloud.ai. And not just that, worldwide, it is the largest proportion, 45% using it for anything to do with testing, acceleration, and experimentation, which means that we really kind of deploy and delegate a lot more in Claude than anybody else. So kudos to the country and what people are and builders are doing from here too.
Okay, Cheryl, back to you. Now, obviously, human behavior is notoriously hard to predict. But in your book, Shapers and Founders, you've studied human behavior, sometimes after the fact. So, what behaviors and mindsets have you studied from CEOs that you think will be particularly valuable in the era of AI?
So I think what's intriguing is that the behaviors that made the leaders we studied, which include in India some of the greats, the Ambanis, Murthy's, Mahindra, Uday Kotak were all there. So, and when we look at those behaviors, what we see is a couple of things. Number one is just the comfort with ambiguity and in identify and making opportunity out of chaos. I think what many founder CEOs, their take was, look, there is no bigger risk than not taking any risk. And so even in a situation like this, where there is a lot of uncertainty, these people are eyeing it and recognizing the time is now to experiment. But that being said, I would also say that from an innovation lens, they are constantly expecting to say, look, both the what we call the big I, the big leaps, as well as the small I, the constant innovation. So they are asking themselves questioningly, how do I embrace this to make it different? To give you an example, Sydney Lu Foxconn, one of the largest players, right? So from their perspective, Sydney Lu will say, look, Every 3 years, we are asking ourselves, what's the next big thing? And the moment they've launched it, they're on the search again constantly for that front. So that's what we call the big I innovation way of thinking. But at the same time, they recognize, and we have this long history in Asia of something called Kaizen, right? The constant improvement. They also are constantly recognizing that the little changes we make day to day drive improvement. We see this very well in India, where small incremental changes has made India an innovator.
What's called jugaad in India, a little bit, step by step.
Same concept. And so if I think about why these traits, while many of the owners here who spoke to are not from the AI generation, but the commonality here is that with AI coming, we don't know what we don't know. We are still constantly discovering. But the point is that the moment is there to seize it. The moment is there to have a clear eye view of what value could this potentially create. And we see those behaviors as being still as relevant today.
Okay. Hans, almost nobody talks about blockchain anymore after the lockdown, right? And your company uses blockchain to kickstart lending. Tell us a little bit about where blockchain is and how you use it and how that's going to reshape finance in India.
That was a question I hope we would not have time to ask. So, I mean, to be honest, for me, blockchain that's equivalent to the cryptocurrency, right? I mean, this was the way
NFTs.
Yeah, well, that was the way I was kind of introduced to this in my younger days. But I think that there are so many companies now using blockchain-like technologies that it's become like common. I mean, we do not necessarily discuss it as part of the investment strategy or something we have to discuss separately for additional investments, right? We just get technologies available for the business, which could be based on blockchain technology. So for us, I mean, this is not a kind of a separate investment case. It's just a technology which is there. It's one of very many new technologies or disruptive technologies that have happened. I mean, if I look back to my 30 years of experience in private equity, so much has happened during those 30 years. It's the last one, which is we are discussing now, the AI. I mean, that's of course very serious disruptive technology. But looking for 30 years, you got the smartphones, you got the internet, you got cloud computing, you got this blockchain, you got so many things, and you got your investors asking for you have to focus on ESG investments, and renewables and circular economy, and you have to adopt to all these new technologies. So blockchain is just one of them. And for me, it's kind of, in a way, a no-brainer. Again, as long as you have something available, you will use it if it's good for your business.
How do you personally use AI, other than
who I work for?
Yeah, for work and for life, how do you personally use AI?
No, I mean, I've, as I said, 30 years of private equity experience. I'm here in India, being humble. I'm here to learn. I'm not here to teach. I'm willing and happy to share, this knowledge from 30 years in Europe, doing small and medium-sized growth type of investments. And I hope to meet up with good Indian businessmen who want our money, not just because it's money, but because it's, we can add a lot much more, adding our expertise, adding access to new markets. We will share with that knowledge that we build up and help entrepreneurs, creating these big national leaders and international players. So this is how we work. We want to be on the ground. We want to, as we say, get dirty on our hands. We want to be meeting with the entrepreneurs regularly and really be a player that they can be sparring with all the time. So being an active owner, I think that's the slogan of private equity, is active ownership. We're not just a sleeping investor. We're there to, help developing.
Irina, Smriti Irani just referenced you as the India head of Anthropic. So give us a sense of Anthropic's scale in India and how you hope to interact with the government that also wants a sovereign AI in India.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we set up our office about 6 months back, and it's been a rapid pace in the way we are kind of looking at working along with India. India is a very strategic and core market for two reasons. One, we have the builders across the entire developer ecosystem, startups, people in the education, higher education, etc. And more importantly, it's also kind of contributing to the mission, the way Anthropic is looking at serving the last mile and solving population scale problems. So from the time that we started, there's been a few things. One, the adoption and the enthusiasm has continued to be very strong. And being a builder company ourselves, we just love working with organizations here and the country, which is creating the builders. Second, a lot of the asks from the government and the regulatory space was also towards ensuring that you have data residency, which was already there, but inferencing available, and we just announced it as well. So that creates a big unlock. In the entire enterprise space, whether it's banking, insurance, healthcare, etc. We've been working with a lot of the banks, the likes of the Axis Bank, Kotak Bank, etc., who are using it for creating engineering excellences and productivity. We are working with NPCI for what they're creating as an agentic solutions. We are working with the local and the global SIs who are kind of building solutions like the likes of the TCSs, Infosys, etc., and creating that globally. And to the question on government, we are working with them for areas of priority sectors, including agriculture, education, skilling, healthcare, life sciences, and also working via what we call our beneficial deployments team, which work with NGOs to ensure that we are creating nuanced solutions for the market. For example, our AI for Science is working along with IISc for a solution which is towards anti-venom discoveries for ensuring that you're ahead of the curve for something like a snake bites, which kind of have a fatality of about 58,000 annually. We are working with Digital Green, which is working along with farmers to ensure that you're responding to queries for 1 million a year in multiple languages, working with Adalat to ensure that we are kind of getting legal cases ahead of the curve. So that's the framing with which we are working. And I think our mission here remains that it's not with the playbook that we've come in, it's to co-create the playbook which will work for India, and then we take it globally.
Okay, on that note, very a similar question for you. Both of you work in global companies, you have global ambitions, you'd like to deliver services across the world, you'd like to deliver agility for enterprises across the world, and you have to deal with governments that want local cloud options, that want data residency. Is there a conflict between global ambitions and catering to the legitimate needs of local governments?
For Arena, from
Yeah, for you.
yeah. So SAP has been actually operating in India for over 3 decades, and across the world, including India, we work very, very closely with governments over our tenure and get great support here in India in partnership to understand your local requirements and also then to bring the global best practices knowledge to the local countries, right? For SAP, we actually developed a lot of innovation out of India already. We have got labs in Bangalore, which is the largest lab outside of our headquarters in Germany. And that brings us the ability to understand local requirements and to cater them for the market. In fact, 40% of innovation that we also deploy to our customers globally is developed right out of labs here. And SAP, having worked with the largest enterprises as well as SMEs, we are familiar with all the requirements in terms of, and we do have I would say, a lot of flexibility in how we deploy cloud options as well as AI across to all our customers that we serve across 25 industries.
Cheryl, you theorize in your book that the winners in the AI era won't be the companies with the best or strongest AI. It won't be. It will be those that are best at turning AI into business results. How does an organization do this? You can have the fanciest toy in the room, but you don't know how to turn it into business results or profits or market share.
So I think fundamentally, when we look at the stats, right, most about 80-90% of companies say they're investing in AI. But you ask in terms of actual value capture, I think in the same vein, 80-90% are saying we don't see the value capture yet. And what we see fundamentally is that getting the technology and data right, and admittedly, that is challenging, But that's only just the first part of the story. The bigger part is how do we help our talent prepare for it, and what's the change management in play? Now, the reality is this. We know now that about 76% of jobs are going to need to be fundamentally redesigned just by the scope of the degree to which technology, whether it's from basic automation all the way to gen and agentic AI plays, is going to change the nature of the work. In that model, the companies that are going to win are the companies that are amazing talent factories. They're amazing at upskilling, reskilling, redeployment at scale. Now, for most organizations, previously the shelf life was much longer. So that kind of training is something we're like, yes, it happens, but it's not something that's deliberate, that's intensive, that's driven. So that's one thing that we are seeing, that the companies now that are doing better at the value capture, they are not just redesigning the workflows to make sure AI is really embedded rather than just saying, I've got cool tech, guys, come and play with it. They have redesigned the workflows, but then they're investing in the people, they're investing in upskilling, reskilling, as well as they're investing extensively in the change management to drive adoption. There's a lot of anxiety about AI. One of the things we see actually is that one of the biggest barriers is just people being afraid to say, this is going to take over my job, so I'm not going to engage. So for us, that notion of saying invest in technology, invest in operating models, invest in change management, that will be the difference in the value capture.
We have about 5 minutes to go, so I'm going to do a rapid fire round. Irina, first for you. Two things that should be keeping Indian CEOs awake at night with respect to AI.
I think two things that I would really encourage Indian CEOs to do is that first, use it for yourself to build things, not just ask questions, build it for certain things that you really care about. Those dashboards, the live dynamic screens, whatever you may. The second thing is ensure that you figure out what is the most complex problem which or a moonshot which you've not solved for it, and create a task force, a mission around solving that, because when you put across the biggest out there, the rest will surely happen.
Hans, we don't want a politically correct answer to this. Rate Gift City when you compare it to Singapore and Dubai, 1, 2, and 3.
That's a question I maybe should be a bit, should be maybe difficult to answer, but we have been in Gift City for some years now. And I think we're very happy with it. We have a very good dialogue with the administration and the regulator. I feel that everything is quite dynamic. You are able to see changes that are necessary. We see really increasing activities, a lot of buildings coming up, new companies coming in. And if you compare with Singapore and Dubai and other these type of offshore hubs, they have like 20, 30, 40, 50 years of track record. They have built up wealth management, international money flows, their trading centers, their shipping centers. I mean, it doesn't make sense to try to replicate. This is not a copy paste. The advantage of GIFT is the access to India. So India as the market today with the highest growth rates, where basically from now on, all serious investors will need to have activities towards India, because here is where the profits are made. And Gift City, I think, is the place to be because of the regulation, the fact that you're in an offshore zone, and the access to India is a strategic element of it. And then long term also, Indian companies can use Gift City to go abroad. So I think Gift City is a marvelous entity, and it's under development as well, and it's improving by the day.
Okay, final question for you, Verena. For a non-tech audience, it's quite hard to grasp how big the opportunity is for enterprise AI. Can you throw a couple of numbers at us to tell us how big the enterprise opportunity is?
It is enormous. Let's put it that way. I think we all acknowledge it. And I would say it's not another technology cycle or bust. I will quote McKinsey here. Latest research show that the opportunity or the economic value that we can get from AI is $4.4 trillion US, right? And we talk about value, we can see tremendous value, and it's really good to see India looking to leapfrog, right? So currently, in terms of investments, it's about 2.6 to 2.8 million investments based on the research I talked about earlier of investments that the companies make in AI. But India companies that we have interviewed plan to almost double that to 45% over the next 2 years and see a great amount of return. So looking forward to partnering with many Indian companies to leapfrog and showcase AI and win the AI race together.
Okay, Cheryl, final question for you. We have about a minute left. You know, many people are worried about AI threatening their jobs, and the McKinsey person, you're usually the smartest person in that room. What happens when the CEO says, I'm not going to hire somebody from McKinsey, I have an agentic McKinsey consultant? Are you worried that consulting is going to be impacted by the very thing that you're promoting?
Oh, consulting is absolutely being impacted already today. I see my starting analysts building in minutes, if not at most hours, things that used to take us weeks to put together. I think for me, though, what doesn't change is at the end of the day, it's the human connection. You can have the right answer, but we all know the moment you hit the ground, strategy fails if culture isn't there, the people connectors aren't there. So for that reason, for me, like the question is not about does AI replace us, but how does AI augment the thinking? So for me as a consultant, I think AI frees up capacity for us to be investing deeply in the human relationships, in the culture building, in the capability building. That's what will enable success.
In the words of Peter Drucker, he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. All right, ladies and Hans, thank you very much for being part of this panel discussion. Thank you for being a patient audience. Ritika, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So clearly, AI changes more than how work gets done. And the leadership question addressed is that how much judgment to delegate to AI when accountability still belongs to people. A big thank you, Ms. Lim, Ms. Siao, Ms. Kos, and Mr. Naigod. And of course, thank you, Suresh, for masterfully steering the conversation. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. While we move forward, we would like to still stay with AI and turn the lens this time towards India. Few markets can offer technology companies this kind of combination of scale, a deep developer ecosystem, and businesses willing to put new tools to work this quickly.
But an AI dividend isn't created by access alone. It depends on whether businesses, workers, and institutions can use that technology to solve real problems and build capability across the economy.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to our next conversation, which is unlocking India's AI dividend. In conversation with technology editor at the Economic Times, Surya Agarwal, please let's give a generous warm applause and a welcome to Vice President and Country Manager of Google India, Preeti Lobana.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Preeti, thanks for being here. It's lovely to have you at the ETWLF.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Right. So let me start by saying that I think in the last many decades, Google has made some really big, bold bets on India. I think 5 years back, it announced a 10 billion digitization fund. Last year, it even topped it with a 15 billion commitment towards making data centers, a AI hub in Vizag. Let me ask you that when you talk to enterprises in India, in terms of their understanding and the excitement around the AI deployment. What gives you this confidence to have such a large build out in India? Because I was catching up on one of your conversations and you said that the Vizag data center is apparently the largest outside of the US.
Yeah. So let's take a step back. When we talk about industrialization, countries invested in building railroads and highways and power grids. And that is what powered GDP in that time. When we're talking about the AI era, I mean, data centers, the compute infrastructure is what is the new national grid, so to speak, if it is to power our economy. And for us, when you look at the India AI mission as well, the government has clearly stated that compute capacity is very critical and foundational to sort of drive this momentum forward in the AI era.
So from a Google perspective, it is very critical that we have massive digital, adoption in our economy. Everyone knows about DPI, right? But if we are to have this have a big economic impact, we really need the compute, we need the subsea fiber cables, we need the security protocols, we need the foundational models, we need the application layer, we need cutting edge infrastructure to power all of this. And hence our faith and investment that we are partnering with India and the ecosystem here to power the country forward. And by the way, when we talk to enterprises, the demand is absolutely there. I'll just give you an example. We are way past the era of experiments and proof of concepts. So let's take Tata Steel, right? They bypassed all the incremental proof points and studies and straight away deployed 300 specialized AI agents in 9 months, which are delivering gains in terms of safety at the shop floor level, in terms of invoicing and all of those gains. So the demand is absolutely there, and there are multiple enterprises in retail, in manufacturing, in financial services that are deploying AI. And we are very proud and privileged to be partnering with Government of India and the Indian ecosystem to be investing in and providing the infrastructure.
Sure. So, like you're saying that you're very optimistic about the demand. But let me ask you, are you also looking at India as an export hub for some of these services out of your Vizag data center? And also, can we look at more expansion in the future?
So I think it is about, firstly, it's a 1 gigawatt capacity, and it is about servicing the loads that are required to support the Indian ecosystem. That is very, very critical. We work very closely with large enterprises, who have access to a lot, but equally important for us is to power up the Indian startup ecosystem. I'm super bullish, it's such a thriving ecosystem. Our founders are very innovative, they take big bets, they know how to work well both to solve local, for hyperlocal solutions, and how to think global. So first thing first, build out the 1 gigawatt capacity, and then making sure we are partnering with the ecosystem to help them scale the solutions both for India and globally.
Right. Preeti, since you mentioned about startups, let me ask you, what are your observations of the kind of solutions and services that are being built out of India as far as the Indian startups and the AI ecosystem is concerned?
Oh, I'm so excited about the Indian startup ecosystem. Love the innovation, love the ambition. I meet so many founders in tier 2, tier 3 cities as well when we travel. And many of them think not just India, but they think about solving for and finding users across the globe. And they've been successful as well. I don't know how many people know that India has the highest number of funded consumer AI companies, so that tells you the scale of ambition that the founders have. And for us, it is about partnering with those founders, because for Google, the ethos, when we've been here in India for 20 plus years, it is about partnering with everyone. So it is about the magic of the compute and the models and the infrastructure getting married to the innovative thinking of the founders. And, the other thing that we look at when we work with Indian founders is AI will not work for India if you're just bringing a model developed overseas and deploying it here. It has to work in a very local, unique context and the problems that we have, and language is very critical for that. So one of our other efforts really is to make sure that our models are contextualized for India's diversity of languages, dialects, accents, colloquial understanding, because the founders then take, for example, our open models and build application layers on top of that. Right. So super bullish about that.
Right. I'm going to ask you to expand a little bit about that. You spoke about LLMs, you spoke about how it's important for models to have the language local context, right? So I was catching up one of your earlier conversations, and you said that models have to reach a level where they understand that postnatal care in India is about Gond ka laddu. Now, how do we reach to that level, and what are you doing to make sure? Because India is a diverse country, it's very huge, it's very different, and it is very challenging to also capture all the nuances.
So, this has been a top priority. And first of all, I'm very happy to state that, Gemini, our model, Gemini Live, is now available in 25 English languages, including Maithili, Bhojpuri, Sanskrit, because that is a genuine effort to make sure it's widespread. And it's a big focus area for us to solve for languages which have zero corpus from a digital point of view. So we've been partnering with the Indian Institute of Science over the past 2, 3 years to sort of have, digitizing the languages spoken in 773 districts of India, and we're recording 150,000 hours of spoken speech. And this is not just, when we think about Hindi is not just one language, it's the different accents which the AI model has to be trained on to recognize if it has to solve for the voice centers of different enterprises. It is about colloquial usage. So, for example, in the past, when we were using AI, it would be simple syntax translation, which comes across very stiff grammatically and doesn't connect with the intent of Indian users. Take muhavre. Bandar, bandar kya jane adrak ka swad. How will you make sure that your AI, understands some of these colloquialisms? So it is about capturing those data sets, voice data sets, and then partnering with the government of India's Bhashani project, where we make these high fidelity data sets available to everyone so that founders in India can use these data sets. So I'll give you examples. Like Shunya Labs has used the data sets that Google has provided through Project Vani and Bhashani to provide solutions for 200 plus languages with a much lower compute cost. Or we have SandLogic, which has used Project Vani database to take multiple Hindi accents across multiple states in India to reduce transcription errors in their calls. And these are very critical for commercial success. So whether it's commercial usage building on top of these models that we build, or for AI for social good, our effort as Google is do the best you can so that you're contextualizing for, like I said, Garo as a language, which had no digital presence. But when we make that available, then AI models can be built for that population that speaks that language.
Right. Very interesting. Very interesting to see that, how you're partnering with the Indian startup ecosystem, some of these efforts. Very interesting. I want to now touch upon another very important topic, which is sovereignty. I mean, I think the incidents or events of the last few months have all made us realize that how AI is increasingly becoming a very important geopolitical tool, and sovereignty is becoming a big ask. So, when the world is becoming such a volatile place, how can India safeguard its interests?
India has strong, strengths. Let's be very clear. We have an amazing talent pool of engineers. We've been successful in building very, you know, good businesses which support global sort of enterprises. We are now very good in terms of the infrastructure that is being invested in by Indian companies and the hyperscalers. And we have, India AI mission and the government being very, very laser sharp on making sure that we are building for the future this capability. So when we think about sovereignty, I think it's very critical. Sovereignty is about having control and choice. Both are equally critical. And it is not just about having foundational models. Yes, have the foundational models, but for a country like ours, given the skill sets and the strengths that we have, it's about building the application layers and how do you build that very strong, what I call the AI services economy. And that's what I love about our startup ecosystem. And so having that application layer, having very strong security protocols. So one of the things that we've been very focused on is that when regulated enterprises or government of India has to run workloads which are sensitive, how do you make sure that there is a totally air gapped solution, which is cut off from the public or the physical internet, and your prompts, your model weights, all of that stuff does not leave the perimeter, and you have low latency when you're processing. So very critical to make sure that there is strong partnership if we are to scale some things, but equally build, strong, build your strength in all of these areas. It's important.
Right. So building your strengths in all
And
important areas.
control and choice, both equally important.
Right. Let me talk about security now. I think because we can't have the conversation about digital without making sure that we have enough safeguards in place, right? And especially with the kind of automated fakes or deep fakes, automated frauds that are happening right now, and the pace at which AI is developing. How do we balance the both?
This is a very interesting problem because, as you all know, the bad actor has to be right just once to break through and mess up someone at an individual user or enterprise level. The defenders have to be right all the time to make sure they are safeguarding critical data, user, protection, and all of that. And this is where AI truly acts as a force multiplier because it helps us catch up and make sure that we are really robust. So, from a Google point of view, we've looked at this problem from three lenses. One is the user, the other is the enterprise, and then we are talking about the web. So when we think about the user, we have deployed the best of our AI. And when we think about Android, we use AI to make sure that we are preventing upfront billions of, reach outs through either messages and fake links and all of that. So yes, fraud may happen, but we prevent a lot using AI at our disposal, whether it's the DigiCoverage, program that we have through Android. And then, looking at some of the very unique kind of scams that happen in India, we have things in our phones where you will get an alert on your screen where it'll stop you from sharing your screen with someone which looks like fake. So AI becomes very critical in preventing that. When we think about enterprises, I did reference having the air gap solutions where your sensitive workloads can run completely disconnected and super secure. When it comes to the open web in the AI era, Google was the first. We pioneered something called Synth ID. Now, this is an invisible watermark that is embedded in AI generated content. And its strength is that it's very resilient to filtering or cropping. So it will just still show up. And we've shared this Synth ID with 15 news providers in India so they can check for content provenance. That is very, very key. And then, coming back to my language point, if we are to act, as the trusted protector, our AI has to understand Indian context and language, because to solve for Bharat's security, your AI has to understand all the ways in which scams can arise in our context. That is very, very key. So the Google ethos in our engineering and AI teams has always been design for security at the starting stage. It is not an afterthought that you bolt on. It is that. And we are providing solutions like Code Mentor and all of that to companies like Flipkart, which not only are able to detect malicious, malware, but also repair it, because it's not about identification. It's also about providing the security, and patching it up. So multi-layered approach, very critical if the digital economy has to scale.
Right. I want to talk about another very important issue, which is about jobs. I think for a very long time, India has the advantage of having a demographic dividend, but I think now we need to move to a capability dividend. How do we make sure that this entire anxiety about AI taking away jobs is in some way transformed in the way that we can talk about how India can take an advantage of AI and our frontline workers have more opportunities rather than the threat of being displaced through AI?
So I think it is very important to recognize that with any new technology, the kind of jobs that people are doing undergoes a bit of a change. So more, yes, some jobs may change completely and go away, but equally it's more about jobs undergoing a change. And therefore it is very important to partner with the ecosystem. And this is a private public partnership. Are we upskilling people across the different layers, whether private, public sector, our frontline workers in the health, social sector? And AI can be a force multiplier. You can use AI to upskill people much faster and scale better than you could pre-AI. But it's also about how to use AI to be far more productive and effective. One or can't do it alone. So we doing a fair bit of work, and I'm aware of so many others who are out there working on solid programs from schools to teachers to colleges to professional institutes, one on training. But it is about making sure that we are all not using AI just as a chatbot or as a productivity tool, but truly, how can you learn, be very comfortable so that you stand out from others? Because it's about how do you use it to maximize your output and your creativity.
Right. Priti, in closing, I just want to ask you one question and give me a headline here. If you were sitting on in 2030 at the Economic Times World Leaders Forum and you were to look back at the audacious goal that India has set of having a 1 trillion digital economy, what is the one line or one headline that you would say which defines Google, India, and AI?
I wouldn't link it to a figure. I would link that headline to how India's core of small enterprises, farmers and workers powered the 1 trillion digital economy. Look, we all at Google, we have the privilege of working with big enterprises, and we know that they have scale, they have capability, they have financial resources. But the heartbeat of India lives in tier 2, tier 3, rural India. It lies in the torso and the long tail, and it is about using AI to empower all of those people so that the economic value and benefits of AI empowers them, and they are the ones who are driving that $1 trillion economy. That is the most critical thing, that AI reaches everyone and they are benefiting as well, not just a chosen few, but AI for all.
Right. Not just a chosen few, but AI for all. We'll end this conversation with that. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's have a huge round of applause for Preeti Lobana.
Thank you.
India already has scale and a deep talent base. The dividend will come from turning both into capability across the economy. That's the lesson. Ms. Lobana, thank you very much for joining us. Surabhi, thank you for leading that conversation. And now let's move on.
And now let's move on, turning our focus towards the Indian consumer. By the way, Suresh, talking of Indian consumer, it's hard to put the consumer into a box and to contain them into one PowerPoint slide. What do you think about it?
You know, PowerPoint, the fact that it can't be contained in a PowerPoint slide has never stopped anybody from trying to do so.
But if you were to do that, slide one?
1.4 billion people. Just get together and we'll take one selfie with all of you.
Slide two?
Okay, you have to say enormous, enormous opportunity in India.
Absolutely. Slide three.
Slide three is always that disclaimer that results may vary across state, city, street, household, and within the brain of one person inside that household.
So that's quite a disclaimer, I see.
Which is why one perspective on the Indian consumer is no longer enough.
So fortunately, our next conversation brings together a variety of them, ladies and gentlemen. Our next panel looks at a map every business in India is trying to read, where aspiration is moving. For years, the country's biggest metros were the obvious starting point for premium demand, but that picture today is becoming much more interesting.
And it's becoming interesting because new centers of consumption are emerging, but aspiration itself is changing too. The same consumer can be fiercely value conscious in one decision and completely willing to stretch and blow up billions of dollars on a wedding in another.
Absolutely. So this means that understanding the next Indian consumer is no longer simply about knowing what they can afford. It's about knowing what they now expect.
Our next panel is titled The New India Blueprint, Cities, Consumers, and the Business of Aspiration. Joining us are Managing Director of Amul, Mr. Jayan Mehta. Can we have you on stage? MD and CEO of the Indian Hotels Company, Mr. Puneet Chatwal. Managing Director and CEO of Mercedes-Benz India, Santosh Iyer. And founder and MD of Casa Grande, Arun MN.
And moderating the discussion is senior editor at the Economic Times, Sonali Krishna. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the panelists and the moderator with a round of applause. Over to you, Mr. Sonali.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. What a panel.
Thank you so much for taking time and doing this. Now, before I start, for years, the Indian consumption story has been looked at via three key lenses: more people, more money, more consumption. But something fundamentally is changing. Indian consumers are not just buying more, they're demanding more. They want better products, better service, better experiences, better homes, and better cities. And increasingly, they're willing to pay for them. But at the heart of this story lies a contradiction. India is definitely more aspirational, but remains intensely price conscious. We're becoming more premium, but affordability still matters. And while the metros are rapidly changing, some of the most fascinating consumption stories are coming far beyond them. So today, as I have four leaders on this stage, all of them look at the Indian consumer and this particular evolving consumer from a very different lens. So I'm going to kickstart this conversation with you, Puneet, because I have different ends of the spectrum here. But what exactly is the new Indian consumer aspiring to? And are Indian businesses managing to keep up with their demands and expectations?
Thank you. Can I answer that like 1 minute later? Because I think
Sure.
there's something very much more important that is changing. Even though Indian Hotels represents Taj, but I think it's worth mentioning that Taj is possibly the only brand from India that is on the global stage. And it is going from strength to strength because it's also going where the Indian consumers are traveling. London was always there, but as we open more and more Taj properties across India and across the globe, there is a huge opportunity that we are witnessing like we have never witnessed before. This has happened also in the last 5 years. So that's coming back to your question. I don't think many people in the audience would know that in the last 5 years, at least in 4 years, Brand Finance has rated Taj as world's strongest hotel brand. It's been India's strongest brand, but world's strongest. And I make a statement today because I think that's what will put pressure on us. In 5 years from now, not the 5 years gone by, it will be the world's largest luxury hotel brand and the first one from India, which nobody else has achieved it. So I think that's the consumption story because where do we get the money from? The money is coming from the consumption that is happening in the country. So this is one sector. Now from Taj, I move to hospitality. If you look at the results announced by all publicly listed company, this is one sector which is posting results north of 15%. This is one sector where capex from private sources is possibly the highest that is being spent in building hotels in tier 2, tier 3 cities, new airports, you name it and you get it. Now comes the last part of the question, the price conscious. The
No. My question is not price conscious.
The contradiction on the price conscious
no, I want you to focus on what is the single biggest change because you have the front row to actually looking at Indians traveling, spending, and experiencing, right? So, what is the single discernible change you've seen in the Indian consumer mindset in the last 5 years?
So, there is an aspirational customer which likes to spend, which has gone beyond you only live once, but at the same time is very value driven. When it comes to spending in sectors like jewelry, which will increase in value, there is no problem. But when it comes to spending money on what is consumed and is gone tomorrow, there is a price consciousness. So that's why I said that's the third element of the statement that I wanted to make. That was always the case. And as India transitions and becomes richer and richer, and more people enter into middle class, high middle class, luxury, that volume will increase and price sensitivity will decrease, but not in the short and medium term.
Fair enough. Santosh, let me take this to the other end of the spectrum since I have such a diverse panel. For a long time, luxury in India was about signaling, I have arrived, right? Is that still the luxury consumer today, or has luxury moved more towards self expression, personalization, and experience?
No, I think what we see clearly as a trend from I have arrived to for getting a social status to why should I buy the Mercedes Benz for my own self? I think rewarding oneself for what you have achieved personally, be it in business, private life, professional life, also rewarding the family for their support. I think these are things which was not seen. In the past, it was just a status purchase. I think the status purchase is not no longer as much as what we see. On the value side, it's more not price led, it's value led. And I keep saying to my colleagues back in Germany also, India is a land of paradoxes. So if you see, a lot of people will still travel economy, but when they land, they will step into a Mercedes Benz or maybe go into one of Puneet's hotel chains and check in because there are experiences that they don't want to do. Similarly, they may have the fanciest iPhones to buy, irrespective of the income criteria, but they will still check where it's cheaper to buy a big basket or a Swiggy, Instamart or A and B, and then they will buy. So I think there are certain wherever there is no differentiation when it comes to the product. And the experiences don't kick in, or trust doesn't kick in, or residual values in our case as Mercedes-Benz doesn't kick in, then it's a pure transactional purchase. But more and more, the consumer in India is changing to value-led purchases, and brands have to demonstrate that much more in the future, now as well as in the future.
But would you say, Santosh, that today the Indian consumer, especially your consumer, is more confident to spend on themselves? Is there that confidence coming that I want a Mercedes Benz, not that I want a Mercedes Benz so I can show off to my peers that I own a Mercedes Benz?
No, no, surely. I met someone, in fact, 2 days back. It was a lady who bought a car based out of Delhi. And it was just because she said, my family was, I had to buy this without telling my family. And the reason is, otherwise, I would have been told, no, it's too early. Oh, why should you buy? There are better asset classes and maybe later. But she said, I can afford. She's a young mother of 9-year-old and husband is works for the army, in fact. And then she's a professional by herself. And she was quite candid to say, no, I'm fine, no issues, I will go and buy. And then she had positive reactions from the family later, and also somebody questioning why so soon. So I think we are still in that cusp of evolution. But a large number of young people, earlier used to buy a mass market car, premium luxury. Today, they are not doing that. At the age of 38, they buy an S-Class, that's the first car. Because I've done my job, I've earned for, and I want to reward myself. This is a fundamental shift that you can see in the purchases. So it's not a step-up purchase; it's directly coming in, and I have dreamt of it. I would then realize it as much as I can afford it. Tomorrow, that uncertainty, there is a generation which feels because there's no social security, I should say more. That still remains a large part, but the newer India you can see is still very bold enough to take that risk and go and purchase cars.
Right, right. Now, Jayan, Amul gives us a fascinating counterpoint, right? Because if I put Mercedes and Amul on the same consumer map, is there actually more convergence than we imagine? Because our Indians saying, I may not buy luxury everywhere, but I want a better experience everywhere. I want a better product everywhere.
The good point of having a Dudhwala in this group is you can't be at Taj every day, you can't be at Casa Grande every day, you can't drive Mach every day, but at least you can eat Amul every day and you can read Economic Times every day. And milk, more importantly than a consumption story, is a production story also. Puneet mentioned London, and Amul is a story which happened before independence. The cooperative movement started when it was told that the quality of milk in Bombay was worse than the gutter water of London. And from that, India has now emerged as the largest producer of milk in the world. 1/4 of the total milk in the world is produced in India. And in the next 10 years, 1/3 of the total milk in the world will be produced in India. And milk is the largest agricultural crop of India, and 8 to 10 crore families depend on milk for livelihood. And like Taj, Amul is also ranked as the strongest food brand in the world, and also number 1 and 2 as far as the strongest brands of India. And when Amul does a turnover of 1 lakh crore rupees, getting milk produced from 36 lakh farmer families and a volume of 350 lakh liters per day, it is still 25% of the organized sector of the country. There is a large number of Indians who are converting from loose to package and branded. And that 5% shift itself, you can add 1 Amul every year in India. So this is the opportunity we sense. And when the consumers aspires, we look at not just consumers who are buying my butter, my ghee, my packaged milk, my protein, but also look at that pyramid, bottom of the pyramid, who wants to consume a packaged branded product. And believe you me, selling protein to a customer is easier than asking a housewife to shift from loose milk, which her dudwala was giving, to a packaged branded milk. But that shift is happening now at a very rapid pace. And that gives us this opportunity and sense of confidence that we can speed up the shift of the consumer, and they would prefer a trusted brand. And that's where Amul comes in the story.
Right. But, any category CEO you speak to, the word premiumization is, omnipresent, right? I want to challenge that for a minute, Jayan. Uh, from where you sit, where is premiumization genuinely happening? Is it only in very few areas, or is it just, the general narrative that one gives in the boardroom?
The shifts are happening.
Because all your
one cannot
consumers
deny
know
that.
the price of milk.
Correct. And that is the milk, as I was mentioning to Arulji, is the single largest item you consume. And the expense across categories is highest on dairy products for all households, across all regions, across all categories. People are getting more conscious. I'm talking now of the upper layer. People are more conscious of what we eat. And at Amul, we have taken this protein mission not to just sell protein as a product, but also to sensitize people that each one of us require 1 gram of protein per kg of body weight every day. And whatever form you consume, this will be good for you. So that is one sense of education leading to increase in the awareness of the customers and leading to a shift, which is typically a premium shift because protein has suddenly become expensive, but milk being a superfood comes as a core ingredient for us as far as the protein is concerned. So people, once they shift from a loose to a package brand, that is the first level of premiumization as far as the mindset of a customer is concerned. And then you move across a variety of products. In each of the categories, be it ice creams, to staples like ghee and multiple types of ghee. Butter, of course, is the core product which everyone wants to consume. And more importantly, the varieties of other products that milk gives you. So mithai is a category which is gradually going up at a much better level as far as the premiumization of mindset is concerned. Paneer is another category which is shifting very, very rapidly. And the dairy product itself as a category comes and grows at a much faster rate. So the shifts are not gradual, they are happening at a very, very fast rate. And as if we are not able to sense that at the right time and create an infrastructure, right from procurement of milk in the villages, using the latest technology to processing it and giving it to 1.4 billion people, and sooner or later Amul can become a dairy to the world because that's what India's opportunity offers. We'll need to tap into each of these things at a scale and at speed.
Right. Now, Arun, housing perhaps makes this aspiration versus affordability tension particularly visible, right? People want better homes, they want better communities, better lifestyles, but there is a very real affordable ceiling. How do you tap into aspiration, right, as a builder who does both mid-level and, premium luxury housing without making the product inaccessible to the very consumer who's aspiring for it?
Sure. I want to say the housing amongst the panel which is sitting here, is one which stays with the consumer for very, very long time. Cars are meant to be for about 6, 7, 8 years. I mean, a hotel stays for a night or a restaurant food is for the meal. And even Amul sir, for the matter, actually is out after the day. You have to go back and consume, buy again. In this case, the house is extremely emotional subject here because he is buying this for a very long time. Obviously, even today, a more savvy person who's working in a corporate might buy 3, 4, 5 houses in his life. But that's still about 10, 12 years more or less of usage. Given that affordability, yes, of course, is a very important aspect in housing space per se, but every strata of the segment has become very, very aspirational. So when we say aspirational, it doesn't necessarily talk about only the premium end of the spectrum. Whereas a person who's aspiring to buy a 40, 50 lakh home, which is so-called a mid-segment in most of the cities, his expectations have gone many folds because he's traveled, he is well exposed, his expectations are higher. He wants, the whole aspirational subject comes in through the fact that he wants a very reliable builder who deliver on time, a product which has a better planning, and the location wise it's far far better, and obviously the amenities in the community is higher, the specifications which we offer, the maintainability of the product, because it's passed on for generations. Home is passed on for generations, so he's trying to create wealth here. It's far more serious. So to that extent he's far more aspirational is what I believe. Yeah.
So have builders like yourselves and the Indian consumers who's a buyer, potential buyer, stopped looking at homes in terms of square feet? And are they looking at particularly buying a house in terms of a lifestyle?
Absolutely, absolutely. See, things have changed now. I mean, there was a time when home buying was about how much square foot I could afford, in which location I could afford. And it was somewhere seen kind of a commodity, like a 2 bedroom and a 3 bedroom by any builder is the same. Things have changed totally now. A builder today looks at truly giving a lifestyle, how we engage the community. What kind of a sports facilities we give in a community, what kind of wellness facilities we give, what kind of children safety measures we have. And if you have elderly senior citizens, how comfortable, how friendly it is for them to socialize. I want to tell you something. In Casa Grande, we go even beyond handing over the houses, because at a point housing was about handing over. But today we go on to maintain for 10 years. We give warranties for 7, 8 years, and we run the communities for them. Actually, we do through the next about a decade, we run the community where we have an event company which runs, a lot of congregation events and the way people socialize. And we build homes which are predominantly 1,000 units to 5,000 units in a community. So we are building a village by itself. So it's a very different spectrum. And how they connect, how they live, all these things have transformed in totality.
Right. Now, Santosh, India's luxury market, and you've said that several times, has enormous potential, car market, but it remains relatively small. What is actually holding it back? Is it income, infrastructure, taxation, financing, or is the Indian consumer simply not ready to make luxury a large part of his or her consumption basket?
Wow, the easiest answer is a combination of all. But let me let me try to say certain facts. First of all, from a desirability perspective, I would say there's a strong desirable need to own a Mercedes Benz and luxury products as such. The real fact is, we do more than 100 crores of merchandising in India. Just the caps, t-shirts, some piece of Mercedes Benz, which is just not bought by our customers, but by many for gifting and for just to have a piece of the three-pointed star at their room. So there is a lot of desirability for the brand that happens, that is still there. But when you look at sales volume, and I keep saying we should never measure with the number of units. It's also the revenue. So on revenue terms, if you see the average selling price used to be around 60 lakhs. Today, that's around a crore. Today, as Mercedes-Benz India, we do in excess of 15,000 crores in India in terms of revenue. If you look at our financial services arm, they have a 1.5 billion portfolio in terms of financing. So I think it's the business has grown leapfrogged actually. But from a volume perspective, we would have grown from 10 to 20,000 units a year in that region. So you have to slice it not just from volume, but also from the revenue lens. On the other side, it's also a fact that the per capita GDP was 1700 US to now 2700 in last 10 years. So, and that has a major impact. Whereas if you look at the prices of cars, so, when you take one of the largest selling mass market car, last 10 years, the prices have gone up by 25%. If you look at us, the prices have gone up by 50%. And the reason is exchange rate devaluation, for example, also a lot of technology and innovation which has come into these cars. So there, the affordability matrix of an average consumer to the price that has changed. So let's assume that if the prices had gone up as per the mass market, we could have easily doubled even on the volume terms significantly. So, and that's a matter of fact, because and then the last one, which was a bit of controversy about the spend pattern, right? It's a much more saving mindset, not just for yourself but for your kids, for the next generation. Also, there is not much of social security, so the tendency is to save a bit more than enjoy it today. which is changing. That's what the opening discussions were, that tendency is changing, but still a large number of people look at cars as depreciating asset, which in the financial terms, yes, but when you look at the experiential factor, that you are not just buying a car, and I can argue that the house is a aspired purchase, but I keep telling our consumers, you can't take your house everywhere, right? You can take a car everywhere, and you can spend the time, and from a quality time, in today's condition, average commute is 3 hours, and that 3 hours of quality time in a car, which helps you say you drives you safely and also gives you comfort. So this is still catching up, right? They are still they have the money and the wealth is there in many pockets, but they are still ready to be on a mass market car. And if you look at, let me give another statistics about cars in India. India is a 4.5 million car market. If you take the mass market of this 4.5 million, 53% of cars are sold in tier 3 markets. 30% is sold in 20 or 33, one third is sold in tier 2, and only 20% in tier 1. In luxury segment, it's 52-53% is tier 1, 30% is tier 2, and only 20% in tier 3. So the penetration of cars, so there is no one India. It's 1% on an average, but 2% in metros, 0.8 in tier 2, 0.4 in tier 3. So as India develops, per capita develops, aspirations change. We are damn sure that these percentages will change. And if you have to further give statistics, I'd say there is no one Mumbai. Bombay penetration of cars, Mumbai penetration of cars is close to 3.5%. But South Bombay is already at 6-7, and the suburbs are at 2. So when you go, and thanks to today data from the government, you can actually slice it and check how this works. So there is no one India in that sense. And when you talk about the growth of luxury cars, I always say, at least for us as Mercedes-Benz, it's not just about the volume. It's also about what structure, what do you have the customer with you? Do you have the overall lifetime value? Because we are not selling, we are selling digital extras, we are selling services beyond the car and the product. So this is for us much more critical than just absolute volume growth, I would say.
Puneet, you want to add something to that? Because I
Yeah, I think it's very logical. You don't have the roads in tier 3 today, but we'll have them tomorrow, day after, then the cars will go there too. So I think the infrastructure part will come. But I was feeling a bit depressed when they were talking, because here, the two of us, whatever is consumed is gone the next day. So it's a big issue, and still we have to keep selling and motivate ourselves that, yes, we'll make it happen.
That's 24/7, 365-day demand generation.
But Puneet, even the hotel model is changing, right? No more is a hotel only being looked at as a place to go and stay. It is becoming, restaurants, social places, cultural destinations, places to work and meet. Is the hotel of the future really a hotel? Or is it becoming part of the urban ecosystem?
It's a part of the urban ecosystem. That's how it has been. We always say hotel is your home away from home. And now we started saying it's a part of aspiration. From aspiration comes part of experience. From experience comes premiumization at all levels. I think the myth that we are living in doesn't matter. Clothing, jewelry, hotels, butter, milk, in every segment and in every positioning, low to high, a premiumization is happening because of aspiration and because of experiences that the customer is asking for, which you said at the outset. The customer has become very demanding. What does that mean? Customer has become demanding because they want more. Dil mange more, right?
And where do you see the next big consumption opportunity?
In terms of
If you look at from where that will happen, will it happen in the top 10 cities of India, or will it then come to
no,
the next 20,
no.
30 cities?
Next 20, 30 cities and very different kinds of. I see a very big growth in integrated wellness. I think, as Mr. Mehta said, no, it's easier to. It's very difficult to get that mindset from the milk which is delivered at home to package, but it's easier to sell protein, right? Similarly, it's becoming easier and easier to sell integrated wellness concept, a different way of life, more conscious about living well. I think that is, whether it's in a hotel or it's in a wellness concept or it's in a spa, but I do feel a lot of growth will come there.
Okay, so it's clear that the biggest shift is that Indians are aspiring for more, right? But if I had to ask you a specific question, and I'll come around the panel, but with you, Puneet, first, what is the one thing consumers today will simply refuse to tolerate that they did 5 years ago?
Poor quality. Poor quality and lack of service. So whether it's servicing the community, which is also part of aspiration and premiumization when they build 1,000 units, or it's the car service because something is broken down, or is the quality of meal which was not good and we have to either refund the money or invite the customer back, or any such thing. I think the tolerance of poor quality which does not equate to the price. So price value relationship is become very, very strong.
Sure. Santosh, what is the one assumption about India's luxury consumer that you think will look completely outdated in 5 years?
I think the assumption that the growth will happen based on a tailwind that we have of people just buying premium cars and trying or luxury cars. I think that's not the right assumption and basis. I think the customer experience will be the core if at all this journey has to continue. And here to add to what Puneet said, I think quality is yes, but time I think for luxury customer is becoming even bigger monetization opportunities. Because I think that's something that they are ready to spend even much more. I have customers spending money 40 lakhs to airlift cars because they wanted it 2 months early. But on the other side, a lot of AI in car which helps them save time. The entire autonomous thing, we can ridicule that in India, $300 or 30,000 bucks, you can get a driver. You don't need autonomous. But many of us love to drive. And if you are driving a car, in the traffic situation, if you can give time back to the consumer via autonomous, I'm sure you can spend that time talking to your family or do calls from the car for the office calls or so on and so forth. So giving back time, which today I think we take it a bit, I won't say for granted, we try to do better, but I think this is going to be a much more valuable asset so that how to make it hassle-free, the purchasing process, after sales process, and also further give time back to the consumer. That will be valued more in the luxury space.
Arun, very quickly, what is the one thing we need to stop doing if we want to build better cities?
Better?
Cities.
We should stop expanding the existing cities. Actually, that's exactly what should happen because it's bursting out of the seams. Every city is extremely crowded. To drive through a distance of about 7-8 kilometers in Pune would take about an hour. And that's not the way to go. Obviously, we have to create satellite townships which connect the hub to the suburban pockets, and that's the way it has to be. And we have to build more newer cities, as in the semi-urban centers, which includes the likes of a Coimbatore or a Nasik or a Mysore, has to possibly have the necessary growth through business involvement so that the infrastructure develops. Otherwise, to bring in the whole country into the key urban pockets is going to really become cumbersome. So the best way to build the cities is not to build the existing cities and move to the other cities and build more satellite cities outside of the outside of the main cities. Yeah.
Right. Last word to you, Jayan. What is the one consumer behavior that will define the next decade of mass consumption?
Since I'm speaking last, give me a chance to give 4 T's. Okay. In food, because they say time's up. Thank you. So, in food, taste remains paramount. It's not going to change. He mentioned quality that comes from the second T, which is trust. Consumers want to save time, which you rightly mentioned, so convenience will also be there. And fourth thing, which for all companies catering to such a large country, is availability. So these 4 T's will continue to drive what tomorrow's customer, a decade later, or maybe several decades later. And one thing is for sure, AI is not going to take away our jobs. Thank you.
Well, on that note, thank you so much, gentlemen. The next phase of India's growth engine may not be particularly about getting people to consume more, but about understanding what Indians believe they deserve better. And thank you, gentlemen, for articulating this panel discussion so well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a fascinating conversation that was. And clearly, there may be no single next Indian customer at all. Understanding aspiration means reaching each market on its own terms. A big, big thank you to Mr. Mehta, Mr. Chatwal, Mr. Iyer, and Mr. Arun MN for joining us today. And thank you, Sonali, for masterfully steering this conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, our next address looks at the foundation on which a new global economy is being built. Capital now flows through systems shaped as much by technology as by finance. The countries that help build those systems will now have a larger say in how global growth takes shape.
Now, India's scale gives it a place in that story. Its larger opportunity is to help shape the systems on which the next phase of growth will run. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker has spent much of his career working at precisely that level. He led WorldPay for more than a decade, chaired the Government Commission Khalifa review of UK FinTech, and today leads Brookfield's investment strategy in financial infrastructure.
Now, his address today is titled Shaping What Comes Next India and the Foundation of a New Global Economy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Vice Chair and Head of Financial Infrastructure, Brookfield, Sir Ron Khalifa. Sir Ron.
Good afternoon. There are moments in history when the future arrives quietly. And there are moments when you can almost hear it. I believe that we are living through one of those moments. Not because another app has been launched, not because another AI model has broken another benchmark, but because somewhere in the world today, governments are redrawing supply chains, investors are redirecting trillions of dollars, companies are rethinking where they build, and nations are deciding who they can truly depend on. The rules of the global economy are being rewritten. The question is no longer whether the world will change. The question is who will shape what comes next. And that's exactly why this discussion here in India is the best place to have this conversation. Because what happens here over the next decade will not simply determine India's future, it'll determine the world's future. We hear every day that artificial intelligence will define the 21st century. Perhaps. But I think we're asking the wrong question. The question isn't how intelligent will AI become? The real question is, what will intelligence demand from us? Every breakthrough in artificial intelligence creates an appetite for something surprisingly ordinary. Electricity, data centers, fibers, semiconductors, ports, transmission lines, capital, skills, trust. The world celebrates the algorithm, but it is infrastructure that determines whether innovation changes lives or remains a laboratory experiment. History teaches us something remarkably consistent. The Industrial Revolution wasn't won by whoever imagined the steam engine. It was won by those who built the railways. The digital revolution wasn't defined by who invented the internet. It was defined by those who built the networks. And the AI revolution will not simply belong to those who write the smartest code. It'll belong to those who build the strongest foundations. This is not merely a software race, it's an infrastructure race. Now, consider the world we find ourselves in. Only a few years ago, efficiency was the ultimate business strategy. Build wherever costs are lower, source from anywhere, optimize everything. Today, the conversation has changed. Resilience has replaced efficiency. Security has become an economic asset. Energy independence matters. Trusted digital infrastructure matters. Reliable supply chains matter. National capability matters. And perhaps more importantly, long-term thinking matters again. For decades, we rewarded quarterly performance. The next generation will reward those prepared to invest over decades. That's an extraordinary shift, and it creates one of the largest investment opportunities any of us are likely to witness in our own lifetimes. Now, let me turn to India, because something remarkable has happened here. Not overnight, not by accident, but through years of determined investment. Over the past decade, India has built one of the world's most sophisticated digital public infrastructures. Hundreds of millions of citizens now participate in digital economy, unimaginable only a generation ago. UPI processes billions of digital transactions every month. Digital identity has transformed access to services, and financial inclusion has expanded dramatically. More people are connected, more businesses are formalized, more entrepreneurs can participate in economic growth than ever before. That scale is extraordinary, but scale alone is never enough. The real achievement is that technology here has not only made markets more efficient, it has made opportunity more inclusive. That's much harder to do. And much more importantly, India also possesses something many countries envy: youth, talent, ambition. Every year, hundreds of thousands of engineers enter the workforce. India already contributes to some of the world's most sophisticated software, technology, and engineering programs. Increasingly, those capabilities are staying here, building companies here, creating intellectual property here, developing technologies here. That matters, again, enormously. Because in the economy that's emerging, human capital will become every bit as important as financial capital. Yet, I would offer one challenge, and I say this because I believe deeply in India's potential. Do not think too small. The ambition should not simply be to be one of the world's largest economies. That's an outcome. It is not the prize. The prize is much bigger. The prize is to become the country the world turns to when it needs trusted infrastructure, trusted digital systems, trusted capital, trusted partnerships, trusted innovation. The prize is leadership, not through size alone, not through capability, but through reliability, through confidence. That's a far more enduring source of influence. Because this century will not be defined simply by GDP rankings. It'll be defined by which countries become indispensable. The indispensable countries will attract investment, they will attract talent, they will attract ideas, and ultimately, they will shape the rules others follow. That's the opportunity before India today. Let me briefly tell you about an organization that thinks constantly about horizons measured not in quarters, but in decades. At Brookfield, we have invested over $30 billion in India over almost 2 decades. We don't invest in headlines. Headlines change every day. We invest in systems that will still matter 20 years from now. For example, we are one of the largest foreign investors in critical infrastructure, including Pipeline Infrastructure Limited, which operates India's longest privately owned cross-country natural gas line, spanning approximately 1,500 kilometers from India's east coast to the west. We own Altius, one of the world's largest telecom tower companies, which serves approximately 40% of India's mobile networks. In real estate, we have a hospitality portfolio, the Leela Palaces, Hotels and Resorts, which exemplifies the increasing demand for premium experiential hospitality. And there's also renewable energy. These are the foundations upon which economies continue to grow long after today's headlines have been forgotten. That is why we've invested for almost 2 decades in India, because we believe the structural story is one of the strongest anywhere in the world. Our conviction has only grown stronger. But optimism should never become complacency. The challenges remain significant. Energy demand will accelerate dramatically. AI will require unprecedented computing capacity. Urbanization will test infrastructure. Climate resilience will require enormous investment. Global competition will intensify. And none of these challenges are optional. Every nation will confront them. The difference will be who acts earliest, who acts fastest, and who thinks furthest ahead. There is an old assumption that history belongs to those who react quickest. I no longer believe that. I think history belongs to those who prepare earliest. Preparation has become a competitive advantage. Infrastructure has become strategy. Resilience has become growth. And trust has become currency. So let me finish where I began. The world is changing, not gradually, but fundamentally. The old assumption about trade, security, technology, and economic leadership are giving way to something entirely new. Moments like this do not come often, perhaps once in a generation, perhaps once in a century. But when they arrive, countries face a choice: to adapt or to lead. I believe India has earned the right to think not about catching up, but about setting the pace, not about participating in the next industrial revolution, but about powering it, not about asking what the future will bring, but deciding what future it wants to build. Because the greatest nations do not wait for history, they write it. And if India continues to invest with courage, to innovate with confidence, and to build with ambition, then decades from now, people will not simply say that the AI revolution changed the world. They will say something much more profound: that when the world needed a new foundation for a new era, India helped build it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Ron, for that very special address. Now, if there's a line, an idea, or a disagreement from this morning that's really stayed with you, please make sure that you share it generously on the social media. But while you do that, please don't forget to use our hashtag, which is hashtag ETWLF2026. And also don't forget to tag us. That is the Economic Times.
And if there's someone in the room you've been meaning to meet, download the ETWLF networking app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. You can start a chat or schedule a one-to-one meeting directly from the app.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to give the agenda for this forum a brief pause. But when we return, we turn to Dubai and to a relationship that has become increasingly important to Indian businesses looking beyond home. His Excellency Muhammad Ali Rashid Lutha, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Dubai Chambers, joins us for India, Dubai, and the new geography of global business.
And we'll resume right here in this room at 1:45 p.m. Until then, please make your way to the Shah Jahan Hall, where lunch is served. Enjoy.